The most expensive lie in retirement is that waiting until 70 is always the smart move. I have watched people obey that rule and quietly burn years of useful income, household flexibility, and peace of mind while telling themselves they were being disciplined. Social Security is not a trophy for patience. It is a lever inside a machine. Pull it at the wrong time and the machine takes more than it gives. Pull it at the right time and 62, the age television pundits treat like failure, can become the age that protects the rest of your retirement. I am Warren Buffett, and I want to make one thing painfully clear. The goal is not to die with the largest Social Security check. The goal is to make the best lifetime decision with the life, the health, the spouse, the portfolio, and the risks you actually have. That is the whole game. Most people are taught to think about this backwards. They are taught to chase the biggest monthly number. They are taught to worship the age 70 check. They are taught to believe that filing at 62 means you panicked, you planned poorly, or you simply did not understand the math. That is lazy advice. Sometimes waiting is exactly right. Sometimes filing at 62 is exactly right. The real mistake is not filing early. The real mistake is turning a life decision into a morality contest. I do not care whether your check is bigger on paper. I care whether your household is stronger. I care whether your assets are more protected. I care whether your spouse is safer. I care whether your bad years are funded before they arrive. That is why I want to give you the real framework. Not the media framework, not the slogan, not the one-sentence rule. The real one. If you were born in 1960 or later, your full retirement age is 67. If you file at 62, your retirement benefit is reduced by about 30%. If your full retirement age benefit would have been $4,000 a month, filing at 62 cuts it to about $2,800. If you wait until 70, delayed retirement credits can take that same benefit to about $4,960 a month, roughly 124% of your full retirement age amount. That sounds like a case closed. It is not, because that simple comparison hides the one fact that controls everything. You do not live on a chart. You live inside a household, a body, a tax return, a labor market, and a clock. And the clock does not negotiate. So let me give you the 6 mechanisms that matter. I am going to name them because unnamed forces control people. Named forces can be managed. The first mechanism is what I call the break-even trap. This is where most of the bad advice begins. People hear that waiting until 70 raises the check, and they stop thinking. They never ask the only question that matters. How long do I need to live for waiting to actually win? When you compare filing at 62 with filing at 67, the rough break-even point often lands around age 78. When you compare 62 with 70, it is often around age 80 or 81. That means the person who waited usually needs to live long enough for the larger later check to catch up with the smaller earlier checks. That is not a theory problem. That is a lifespan problem. Suppose one person files at 62 and receives $2,800 a month. Another waits until 70 and receives about $4,960 a month. The second person looks brilliant on paper. But from age 62 to age 70, the first person collected 96 monthly checks. That is about $268,800 before you even begin comparing what happens later. If the early filer dies before the break-even zone, the bigger delayed check was never a victory. It was an unused option. That is why I call it the break-even trap. People treat delayed claiming like free money. It is not free. You pay for it with time. You pay for it with foregone checks. You pay for it with the assumption that your future self will be there long enough to cash the reward. If you are single, in weaker health, carrying chronic conditions, or staring at a family history full of short lifespans, this mechanism matters even more. I am not telling you to be pessimistic. I am telling you to stop lying to yourself. If your family has a pattern of heart disease, stroke, early cancer, or severe decline in the 70s, pretending you are a statistical exception is not optimism. It is financial fiction. Social Security is longevity insurance. If your likely retirement runway is shorter, taking money earlier can be the rational move. Not the emotional move, not the fearful move, the rational move. The second mechanism is the household unlock. This is where individual optimization destroys family optimization. Your spouse usually cannot collect a spousal benefit on your record until you file for your own retirement benefit. That rule alone blows up a lot of simplistic advice. A spouse's benefit can be as much as 50% of your full retirement age amount if the spouse claims at their own full retirement age. Now look at the household instead of the ego. Assume your full retirement age benefit is $3,200 a month. Half of that is $1,600. Your spouse has little or no earnings record of their own. If you refuse to file from age 62 to age 70 because you are obsessed with maximizing your own check, you may be locking your household out of years of spousal income, 8 years, 96 months. Potentially over $150,000 of gross household cash flow delayed or lost, depending on ages and timing. That is not a tiny side issue. That is the whole board. I have seen households starve the family now so one spouse can feel clever later. That is not planning. That is vanity dressed up as discipline. The higher earner says, I am maximizing my benefit. Number, you are optimizing one line item while ignoring the family balance sheet. When I look at retirement, I do not ask, how do I make one check as large as possible? I ask, how do I produce the strongest total outcome for the household I am trying to protect? If filing at 62 unlocks a spouse's benefits that your family needs, then 62 is not the weak move. It is the move that understands what money is for. Money is not there to impress a calculator. Money is there to support people. The third mechanism is the survivor switch. This one is even more powerful because it exposes how badly most people misunderstand married claiming decisions. When one spouse dies, the surviving spouse can generally receive the higher of the two benefits, not both. That means survivor planning can completely change what smart looks like. Here is a common structure. The lower earner files earlier, sometimes at 62, and the higher earner delays longer to build the larger lifetime and survivor benefit. That is not contradiction. That is coordination. Suppose the lower earner's own benefit at 62 is $1,100 a month. Suppose the higher earner waits and builds a benefit of $4,000 a month for years. The household gets the lower earner's smaller check, while the larger check keeps growing. Later, if the higher earner dies first, the survivor may step into that larger benefit. Now compare that with a lazy one-size-fits-all rule telling both spouses to wait. That rule may reduce total household income during key years and still fail to improve the survivor's long-term security, or flip the case. Suppose one spouse has clear health problems and may not live long. The other spouse is likely to live much longer. The claiming decision is no longer just about the first death. It is about the income path on both sides of it. You are not running one retirement, you are running two sequential retirements connected by death. That is uncomfortable to say. It is still true. And adults who plan well do not hide from true things because they are unpleasant. They price them. That is the survivor switch. The amateur optimizes the worker. The operator optimizes the widow, the widower, the household, and the years after the first funeral. That is a different level of thinking. The fourth mechanism is the portfolio shield. This is where many intelligent savers make a terrible mistake. They have real money. They have maybe $1 million, $1.5 million, sometimes more. They retire in their early 60s. Then someone tells them, you can afford to wait on Social Security, so you should. Maybe, maybe not, if you are no longer working. Every dollar you do not get from Social Security has to come from somewhere else. Usually that means your portfolio. And that means you are selling assets to manufacture the income you refuse to take from the government. If the market is kind, maybe that works fine. If the market is cruel early in retirement, that decision can become very expensive. Let us make it concrete. Assume you need $90,000 a year to live. Assume filing at 62 would give you $36,000 a year. If you do not take it, your portfolio has to cover that missing $36,000. Now imagine the first 2 years of retirement include a bear market. Your stocks are down 20%, your bonds are not helping enough. You are not just losing market value, you are withdrawing into the loss. That combination is poison. It is called sequence of returns risk, and it ruins more retirements than people want to admit. In that situation, the smaller early Social Security check is not just income. It is a shield. It reduces forced selling, it buys your assets time, it lowers the pressure on your portfolio when the portfolio is least able to tolerate pressure. That is why a person with a sizable nest egg can still rationally file at 62, not because they are desperate, because they understand fragility. A portfolio is not stronger because you were stubborn about a government check. A portfolio is stronger when it is asked to do less during bad markets. The fifth mechanism is the gap bridge. This one is simple, and because it is simple, people ignore it. Sometimes another source of guaranteed lifetime income is coming later. A pension starts at 65. A deferred income annuity starts at 67. A property sale is scheduled. A spouse will keep working for 3 more years. The household only needs a bridge. In that case, filing at 62 can be a clean way to span the gap years without mangling the rest of the plan. Suppose you retire at 62. A pension starts at 65 and pays $2,700 a month for life. If you wait on Social Security, you may have to draw heavily from savings for 3 years. If you file at 62, you create a partial income floor immediately and reduce the amount you need to pull from your accounts. You are matching income timing to reality. That matters a lot. I have never met a retiree who lives in lifetime totals. I have met many retirees who live in months. Can we pay the bills this month? Can we avoid liquidating assets this month? Can we get to the pension date without damaging the portfolio this month? That is how real life works. The gap bridge is not elegant, it is useful, and useful wins. The sixth mechanism is the reality override. This is the one the financial media hates because it destroys the fantasy that everyone has optionality. Sometimes you cannot work past 62. Sometimes your knees are gone. Sometimes your back is finished. Sometimes the layoff came at 61 and no one will hire you at anything close to your old pay. Sometimes the white-collar version is just as brutal. Your title is gone. The market has moved, you are overqualified, which is corporate language for too old and too expensive. In that case, the spreadsheet morality lecture is worthless. Social Security exists partly because bodies break, jobs disappear, and life does not follow the clean path people draw in their 40s. If you cannot keep earning and you do not have enough liquid assets to bridge the gap, filing at 62 is not surrender. It is what the system is there for. But I need to draw a sharp line here because this is where people get sloppy. Reality override is not permission to stop thinking. It is permission to stop pretending. You still need to know whether you can reduce spending. You still need to know whether part-time work is possible. You still need to know whether your spouse's income changes the equation. You still need to know whether claiming now solves a short-term problem by creating a permanent long-term one. That is what adults do. They do not panic. They do not posture. They assess. Now let me turn the knife the other direction. There are cases where filing at 62 is dumb, not controversial, not nuanced, just dumb. If you are still working and earning well above the retirement earnings limit before full retirement age, you are stepping into a trap. In 2026, if you are under full retirement age for the whole year, the earnings limit is $24,480. Above that, Social Security withholds $1 of benefits for every $2 of earnings over the limit. So if you are still earning strong wages, you can create a stupid mix of a permanently reduced benefit and withheld checks. That is chaos, not strategy. If Social Security will be the foundation of your retirement, not the supplement, waiting often becomes much more powerful. When Social Security is your main floor, every extra monthly dollar matters more. The gap between roughly $2,800 at 62 and nearly $5,000 at 70 is not cosmetic. It is a different standard of living. It is a different widowhood. It is a different late retirement. If you have strong longevity in your family, stable health, and enough assets or work income to bridge the gap safely, the case for waiting gets much stronger. So do not turn my argument into another slogan. I am not saying 62 is best. I am saying 62 can be best. Those are very different statements. This is where most people need an identity flip. You are not choosing between patience and weakness. You are choosing between two pricing systems. That is all. One system pays you less now and more later. The other pays you more now and less later. Neither one is morally superior. The right answer depends on how your life interacts with time, health, marriage, labor, taxes, and risk. The amateur asks, how do I get the largest check? The serious operator asks, which claiming age creates the highest lifetime control? That is the identity flip. You stop acting like a consumer picking a benefit. You start acting like a capital allocator pricing a stream of income under uncertainty. That is a much better way to think. Now let me give you the operating system. This is the 62 protocol. If three things are true, 62 deserves serious respect. First, the household needs income. Now, either because a spouse's benefits unlock, a bridge is needed, or earned income has disappeared. Second, the later years are already defended, either by a spouse's larger benefit, a pension, a portfolio, or a survivor strategy. Third, waiting requires a bet you do not like, a health bet, a labor bet, a market bet, or a longevity bet that feels too optimistic for the facts of your life. If those three conditions are present, filing at 62 can be strong, it can be rational, it can be the smarter move. Now the reverse protocol, if three different things are true, 62 deserves suspicion. First, you are still earning meaningful wages and are likely to run into the earnings limit. Second, Social Security is the backbone of your future lifestyle, and the bigger delayed check would materially improve your long-term security. Third, your health and family history strongly suggest you are likely to live deep into the break-even zone and beyond. If those conditions are true, filing at 6 the 2nd of May cost you a lot. So here is what I would do tonight if I were sitting at your kitchen table. I would pull up the actual estimated benefits at 62, 67, and 70. I would write down the spouse S numbers next to them. I would mark any pension start date, annuity start date, or known change in earned income. I would look hard at the portfolio and ask a brutal question. If I wait, what exactly is funding the gap? Then I would ask the harder question, what am I assuming about my body, my marriage, and my future employability in order to justify waiting? Most people never ask that. They assume the future will cooperate because the chart looks good. That is not analysis. That is hope wearing a necktie. I have spent my life allocating capital, and the best investors I know are not the ones who chase the highest possible upside in a vacuum. They are the ones who understand the full structure of the bet. Claiming Social Security is the same. A bigger check is not automatically a better bet. A smaller check now is not automatically a worse one. What matters is whether the choice fits the structure of your real life. That is why I reject shame in this conversation. If 62 is wrong for you, do not file. If 62 is right for you, do not apologize. Retirement is not a contest to see who can delay the longest. It is a test of whether you can convert the assets and benefits you have into the strongest life you can still live. That is the standard. Not applause, not ideology. Not conventional wisdom, just reality. And reality handled honestly is where good retirement decisions are made. Sometimes the smartest Social Security decision is to wait. Sometimes the smartest Social Security decision is to pull the lever at 62 and never look back. The mistake is not filing at 62. The mistake is letting somebody else's spreadsheet overrule your own life. Let me go one level deeper, because this is where people who sound sophisticated often make the worst errors. They treat Social Security like an isolated product. It is not isolated. It interacts with the rest of your balance sheet. It interacts with withdrawal pressure. It interacts with a spouse's dependence. It interacts with the years when one death turns one retirement plan into another one. That is why a person who waits can still lose, not because the formula changed, because the surrounding system changed. Take a simple case. A couple retires at 62 with $1.2 million invested. They need $85,000 a year if they refuse to claim and pull the whole gap from investments for 8 years. They are asking the portfolio to do all the heavy lifting during the most fragile stage of retirement. If the first 3 years are flat to negative, the withdrawals do real damage. If they claim $32,000 a year at 62 instead, the portfolio only has to produce $53,000. That is a completely different stress level. A smaller check can create a stronger retirement if it reduces forced selling early enough. People miss that because they compare check size. I compare system stress, or take the spouse case. A husband delays because he wants the maximum worker benefit. His wife has a weak earnings history and is waiting on his filing to access a spousal benefit for 8 years. The household runs lean not because they had to, but because he confused maximizing with winning. That is not prudence. That is a spreadsheet ego problem. A bigger future number is seductive. It makes you feel intelligent. But retirement is not improved by feeling intelligent. It is improved by receiving the right cash at the right time with the least collateral damage. That is what smart actually means. And I want to say one more thing about the so-called guaranteed 8% logic people repeat. They say delaying is like earning 8% a year with no risk. That sounds precise. It is not precise enough. That framing ignores the fact that the value of waiting depends on survival, household structure, taxes, portfolio withdrawals, and what those foregone years of cash would have done for your balance sheet. A guaranteed increase in the future is not automatically the highest value move in the present. A government promise can still be a bad trade if the path to reach it forces you to sell assets low, starve the household, or ignore health reality. You do not evaluate an option by staring at the payout. You evaluate it by studying the full cost of carrying it. That is how I have always thought about investments, and that is how I think about Social Security. Now let me tighten the protocol one final time. If filing at 62 would solve a real income problem, reduce pressure on your portfolio, unlock meaningful household benefits, or bridge you to another guaranteed income stream, that is not a red flag. That is a serious candidate if waiting would require heroic assumptions about health, employment, or market returns. That is not prudence. That is exposure. On the other hand, if you are healthy, protected, still earning well, and likely to rely heavily on Social Security deep into old age, then waiting may be the stronger move because the future higher check will do more real work for you. The point is not to fall in love with 62. The point is to stop worshiping 70. Both ages are tools. Neither age is wisdom by itself. Wisdom is knowing which tool fits the pressure you are actually under. That is why I want you to remember one sentence. When this is over, the best claiming age is the age that produces the strongest lifetime position for the household you are actually running. Not the household on television, not the one in the comment section. Yours. If that age is 62, act like an adult and own it. If that age is 70, act like an adult and earn it. But do not confuse delay with intelligence, and do not confuse early filing with failure. Those are stories people tell when they are too lazy to do the real work. The real work is harder. It requires numbers. It requires honesty. It requires admitting that time is not abstract. It is expensive. And once you understand that, you stop asking the childish question, what is the best age to claim Social Security? You ask the grown-up question, what is the most intelligent way to convert this government benefit into lifetime control before time markets and reality start taking options away from me? That is the right question. And once you ask the right question, sometimes 62 stops looking reckless. It starts looking like discipline.